Hi everyone, welcome back to another video. So this is part 2 of the Grey Fergie rebuild, and this is a direct follow-on from last week's video. We got the conversion plate made and now starting to make the chassis rails. Happy with that as well. Now that bolt is not underneath there. It's a bit high now because I've dropped it a little bit, but yeah, that's a lot better. Start drawing my chassis rails now. Right, so I've just drawn that up. Used the bench as a reference. That line there is the bench, and I've taken all the measurements off it, and that's what I've come up with, something like that. Just cut that out, a bit of 3mm plate. That is what it looks like on the engine. I would have preferred that to be higher up really, but I can't because of where the bolts are. I don't know what else I could do. Whether I could press this in a little bit, and because it runs out at the side of there as well, especially when that's 10mm plate, and that'll have to come out a little bit more because there's hardly enough room in the back of there to get the bit that's going to bolt to. I have to cut another one of these out with a bit extra on there to weld that to. This side should be fine, maybe, because like it's offset because of where the pin is in the front bit. Unless I did continue that straight and I pressed it out over and then came that side of them bolts, that might look better, provided I can get in to tighten them up. It just looks like it needs something a bit higher up to support that lot, and then the bottom there'll be another chassis rail sort of from there across there, and then I'll press it round the sump and then bolt onto that. Right, I've just had a thought. I've been stood looking at it for 10 minutes or so. I just thought, why don't I weld them in, chop the heads off them and weld them in and make them into studs, and then I can have that coming straight, and I can just weld me, well, same as that end, just have me chassis rail come onto there and bolt onto there, just like that. It'd look better than that, and it'd be strength where I want it. Yeah, I think that'd be better. Sometimes you just have to stand and look at stuff for a bit. Yeah, I think I'll do that. Yeah, so I'm going to take that back off there, take them bolts out, countersink them holes, and then chop the end of them bolts off, the heads off, and then weld them into that plate, and then I can have that flat then for me plate to go on to bolt the chassis rails to. Yeah, so I just countersunk them, and I've chopped the heads off them bolts. I'll just weld them in there. I could have done it with countersunk bolts and welded it round, but anyway, I haven't got any, so we're doing it with these. Just weld them in like that. Yeah, that's better now, so I can come straight across there with my chassis rails. I might just put a little bend down at the end. Just, yeah, I don't know. No, I think I'll just come straight with the chassis rails like that, because with that tapering away, if I do come down like that, it's going to run off the side. So if I come straight, then it's going to be fully on there. Yeah, so that's the chassis rail I'm going to go with, and then I'll cut 4 of them out as well. That'll be welded onto the front and back plates, and then the chassis rails will bolt to them. I did just realise I had that set wrong, so my measurement needed to be from here to here, needed to be 525, but I had it set 525 from the back there, from the back of the conversion plate to there. So I've just moved it on 10mm. It mattered too much because there is plenty of movement where the axle can go on the pin for the stay bars that go back. So yeah, it's not too critical. Alright, so I've got all them set up, ready to cut out. We're going to pierce, just mark where the holes are with the pierce, and then I'll drill them, because well, some of them are 10mm holes, so they're a bit small to do through 10mm plate, and I'm going to be drilling and tapping some of them. So I'll just drill them all, and then the neater holes, then plasma cut holes. I've just drilled them holes in there just so I can sit it on and see what it looks like. So yeah, that is what it's going to look like. I did them sort of 7mm shorter at either end, so then when I weld them other bits on, it's not going to be sitting on the weld, there's space for the weld. I might just have to space, I'll have to cut out a spacer to go behind there. I'll have to measure what that thickness that needs to be. I might have to come out a little bit more yet, depending on whether there's enough space for that to go up the back of there. Then that one will have to be drilled and tapped, because there's definitely not enough room for a nut on the back side. But yeah, I'm pleased with that. I definitely think that looks better than what that one did. I might have just made a bit of a schoolboy error. I think I'll have to drop this down a little bit, because I won't be able to get that in the back, because the sump is going to be in the way. So it wants to be dropped down sort of 10mm or so. Like that. See, I might just have to cut some new ones out, because I can't really alter them. Won't look right if I try and alter them. Yeah, it's not too much of a problem. Right, so I've cut 2 new chassis rails out now. Well, that's a bit longer, so that's further down, so I can get them bits of plate in the back of there. And then I've cut out the spacer. There's a 12mm spacer on this side. This side has to be spaced off a little bit more because of the sump. And then I've drilled and tapped that plate. They're threaded in them holes on the back plate. And then them ones I'm just going to put nuts and bolts through them. I thought it'd be quicker than tapping them all. And there's plenty of room at the back anyway. And then this side, it's the same, there's a 10mm spacer in the back of there. They're just nuts and bolts. These are nuts and bolts as well, there's enough space. And then I've got the engine sat at 0 degrees, or near enough 0 degrees with a bench. I've put this square on the side here, and then I've measured from there to the side of the pulley, and then worked out what the difference is, and then I've measured from there to the side of the pin to make sure that we're bang in line, rather than, I was just sort of sighting it before, but I thought I'll measure it properly. And then I've also measured from the bench up to there, and got that sat level. So that's level, the engine's level. Yeah, everything should be square and how it should be now. So I think I can tack these in now. I can reach in there with a welder, tack that across the top and that across the bottom. Same with the other side. And these might be a bit more tricky, I don't know how I'm going to do them. Whether I could reach in there with a TIG, if I put the tungsten sticking right far out, I might be able to reach in there with that. Right, that's that front end fastened on then. They're welded up. Just them to weld on yet, but I'll do that when I take the plate back off again. So yeah, lift the whole thing up and then we'll make a chassis rail from underneath. Now I've got the engine sat a bit higher now, so I've got it sat on them off there, and then just on that jack at the front. So plenty of room to get under there and see what I need to do now. So I was thinking with that, I wanted to make the chassis rail, or the bottom chassis rail sort of, well, it'll be bolted onto that, and I sort of wanted to make it go up there and press it up, sort of follow the sump a little bit, and then across to there. But I don't know what I'm going to do to check my oil level, whether I put a sight glass on there, could weld a fitting onto that and weld a fitting onto there somewhere and have a clear bit of pipe, clear bit of hose for a sight glass. Right, it does look like there's a place there in the block where you could drill through and put a dipstick, but then it doesn't really go into the well of the sump there. Obviously that's meant for a different sump. I can't really put a sight glass on the side here because it won't go high enough up. When you look at the oil level in the old sump, there's a bit I chopped off. That's a dipstick. And the end of the dipstick has broken off, but I can sort of get an idea. And yeah, most of that has been full with oil. About an inch of that has broken off when I undid it. I can't find the broken off bit, but when that's in there like that and an inch on the end of there, yeah, that's sort of nearly been full. Right, I've got that bottom rail made as well then, so I just got on and did that. I didn't video it, but it's the same process, and then I've pressed it there and then it bolts on underneath there. That should do that. Just wants that welding on properly, but it all wants dismantling anyway again. The only sort of design flaw is you can't take the sump off with either the front end on or the conversion plate on. So if you want to take the sump off, you've got to take the engine out of the tractor. But there isn't really much else I could have done because of where these bolt holes are. And hopefully I'll never have to have the sump off again anyway, so it shouldn't really matter. But yeah, that's in line with that. That should be, I've just sort of sighted it, but that should be in the middle. Well, it won't be in the middle of the plate because it's offset, but it should be in the middle where the axle is. And then they're drilled and tapped in there. They're just what's trimming off, and then I'll round them round, neaten it up a bit. I just need to get some proper bolts, some M10s for the engine, and then they're M12s. Bolt everything together. I've just sat the radiator back on there to see if my fan shroud would fit, and it won't now. It's too the fan is too low. That's why it's not in line, that's why it was higher, so the fan would fit in the fan shroud. But because that pin wasn't in line with the crank like it's supposed to be, the bonnet wouldn't fit properly, so I had to add it on some spacers like that to lift the bonnet up to clear the top of the radiator. But I'm thinking now, if I alter this, if I just chop that bit out there and lower the radiator a little bit, it'd fit my fan shroud better, and then also the bonnet might fit back on its original mounts without them on, because they jingle and rattle about and are quite annoying. They were only just sort of a bit of a bodge anyway. And then because the bonnet was on them little raisers, it altered where the bonnet fits. Like the bonnet is supposed to sit onto that bulkhead, but for some reason this one didn't, so I had to add a little bit onto it. I had to add that bit on to make it sit on the bulkhead properly. But if I can get away without using them, then the bonnet might fit without that extra bit on it. It also depends where your axle is on that pin, because the axle's not as wide as that pin. So the axle can either be right up there or right up there, which also makes a difference when your stay bars go back. They can be the right length, but that can be slightly forward than what it is, which also sort of knocks your bonnet out of line when it folds down onto the bulkhead. So that's all sort of things you've got to take into consideration. If you were doing it off an original one, you'd have more measurements to go off. But both of these, this one already had this engine in, and that one didn't have an engine. So you have to sort of make it up as you're going along when you haven't got an engine to measure off, an original engine. I've got them bits cut off and lowered and tacked back on, and I tried the radiator on, and it is better now, apart from where the bottom hoses on the radiator catches on there. So once I've got that welded on, I'll just have to chop that bit off. But yeah, that should do that. So I can take it all in bits now, and then weld that on, weld them bits on. And there's a bit I wanted to fill in around the back of there, so you can't see into the bell housing when it's bolted up. And that bit to do. But yeah, that's pretty much sorted now, so take that in bits, and I'll give it some paint as well, and then put it back on the tractor. So I've got all that lot stripped down again, I've got that welded up and that ground flat, and I've cleaned my chassis rails up, and yeah, all that lot is pretty much done now. So with this sump, I'm just going to fill it up with water. I'm going to put 6-7 litres of water in it and see where the level is, and then see what I need to make a sight glass, and also see if it leaks or not. And that's 5 litres of oil, of water. I wouldn't have said it wasn't any more than that in it, because when you look at the bottom of the engine, when the rod comes round, it's going to be splashing in the oil, which you don't want. When you offer that oil bit up to the side, and then when you consider where the dipstick would have been, I think that's about right level. But yeah, I don't think it definitely doesn't want any more in it. Doesn't seem to be leaking anyway. I know water has, like, the surface tension of water. Water won't leak out, but like oil, when it's hot, or like diesel, not that it have diesel in it, but diesel's like thinner and it runs through smaller holes than what water does. But everything seems to be dry. Because the oil pickup is so far down in that sump, it sticks down a long way. probably could run with a lot less oil. It's just the more oil there is, the cooler the oil will be. It's only sort of running with that much oil, it'll soon get hot. It's like that oil pickup wants a good clean. There's all sorts of bits stuck to it. It's like silicone, I think. This engine already has come to grief once because the oil pickup was blocked. It spun a bearing in the rod, so I had to have the crank reground and the rod homed. Someone had, I think they'd had the timing case off before and then stuck it back on with silicone, and this was just clogged solid. When I rebuilt it, I did try and use as little silicone as possible, but obviously some has still got stuck in the pickup. Actually, I've just thought of a better way of doing, of actually putting a dipstick on it. So when you measure on the block, this flat bit here where it looks like it's meant to have a dipstick is 40mm past that bolt hole, near enough. $40mm-ish. Measure on here 40mm past that. It's not quite, it's hard and sharp. If I could drill a hole through the block and then drill a hole through here into that bit. If I didn't drill a hole, it'd be a real stumpy little dipstick, but you only sort of got that much shot depth of oil to measure. But if I drilled a hole through there, I could have a longer dipstick. I think I'm going to try doing that. I'm going to drill through there and make a little spout and then see if I can make a dipstick to go in there rather than a sight glass on the sump. I had a look at my engine supply up there, and I've got this dipstick out of that Ford 10 series engine, which if I chop it off there, that should do ideal, I think. And then yeah, drill another hole in there, and then through that hole inside the block, it'll go in there and then dip into that bit. And I've got a sort of decent bit of depth of oil to dip into. The seam where that bit underneath is welded onto is across there, so yeah, it's a bit, yeah, that'll be plenty of depth of oil to dip into. So I'm gonna use this angle drill and have a go at drilling through there first with that pilot drill, and then want to drill it through an 8.5 and tap it out for a 10mm bolt, and then I can drill out a 10mm bolt, thread it into there, and then the dipstick will slot into the 10mm bolt. Right, so I've got that hole drilled and tapped in there now. So then if I wind a bolt in, and I just need to drill a hole through the middle of the bolt so the dipstick will fit through that. And then I'll PTFE tape that in there, seal that up, and then that should be my dipstick hole. So I've just quickly made that in the lathe for the dipstick rather than just drilling a bolt through. With my 4-jar chuck I couldn't actually hold a bolt in the chuck, it won't go small enough. So I just made that bit out of some round bar. I thought it'd be stronger anyway because it's bigger diameter down that bit rather than it all being that size. Yeah, that threads into there. And then the dipstick fits nicely into that. Like that. Obviously that'll be screwed in more. So I just need to work out now how long my dipstick needs to be and where I need to drill a hole through there. So I've just put a straight edge across there and then measured down to the water level, and it's like 35mm from there to there. And then I measured down from the bottom of the block. I know there'll be a gasket to go in there, which will make up a little bit of difference. And then marked on the dipstick where 35mm is down from there, so that should be my maximum oil level, which I really don't think it needs to be any more oil than that because it's not much lower than when the big ends come round. Got that threaded and PTFE taped in there as well, so that's that bit done. So yeah, I'll drain the water back out of this. I'll just sit the sump back on there again and then see if I can somehow mark through where I need to drill a hole. So I've got another hole drilled in there, which is further forward than I wanted it to be, but that's where it was. So I put a transfer punch down the dipstick hole and then like centre marks it with a transfer punch. If I'd have thought about this first, it's one of these things you don't think about, but I would have made that sump come further forward and then up. But anyway, the dipstick hopefully will go in there and it just gives it a bit more depth of oil to dip rather than just that very tiny bit that was sat in there. So it's not ideal, but should give me some indication of how much oil's in it. I don't think I'll actually have to chop anything off that dipstick. A whole lot goes into the sump, so it must go into that hole that I drilled. So I think I'm going to be alright. It gives me plenty of oil to dip then. Yeah, I think I'll call that done. I'll just mark on the dipstick where the maximum oil level is, and then I'll do. Right, I think I'm happy with that. So take the sump back off, give it a right good clean out, maybe give it a quick spray of black paint, and then I've got a new sump gasket to go on, and then we'll put the sump back on for good then. Right, I've got the sump painted, done it black. I've given it a good good clean out. So I've got a new gasket, which I think is the right one, which is nice. For for a change. So yeah, we'll put that on. Bit of sealant on there, very little sealant. I don't want it to squidge out and end up in the oil pickup again. And then yeah, we'll get that put on. I've cleaned the bottom of the engine, that's nice and clean. So it's ready to go on. I've got everything painted now, so I can start reassembling it. I've just done it in red oxide for now. Eventually, maybe the whole tractor might get painted. Oops. Yeah, red oxide is enough for now. I just want to get it back together. So I don't know if I showed you or not, but that's a clutch plate that I'm using. So I had that one made specially to suit the 1 3/8 10 spline input shaft, but then to suit the Turano flywheel, and then the standard Turano cover plate. That little hub in the middle with some bearings in it for the input shaft, spigot shaft, whatever to go into. So it's all pretty much back together now. I haven't videoed anything since putting the engine in because I've quickly run out of time. But it's got a new radiator on it. And everything's piped back up. Wanted to tidy up a little bit, but it'll do for now. Put a foot throttle on it. It should be a lot better. Can hold on to the steering wheel with two hands now. I put my foot plates on off my other one. That'll be nicer, having somewhere to put your feet rather than having to rest them on there. Wanted a better battery box making, but I haven't got time to do that. Yeah, there's a few bits that wanted neatening up still, but it'll do for what I want it to do for this weekend. So yeah, I'll put a battery on it now and hopefully it should start up and drive. It seems to run and drive anyway. Got good oil pressure. Obviously it's not got to temperature yet. Yeah, I think I'll give it a good wash off now, get all the dust and crap off it, and then ready to load onto the wagon. Yeah, so that is the finished tractor. It was a bit of a rush before I went to Welland, so I didn't really get much chance to video of it when it was back together. But yeah, I don't really like this bit underneath. I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to chop that off across there, and then I'll press this bit up, and then I'll put some bolts back through that way. It just doesn't look right. And then yeah, I'm going to get rid of this and make maybe a proper airbox for it somewhere. Have a pipe going up there. They're just easy to put on. And then yeah, the rest of it just wants tidying up a bit, and then eventually I might get around to painting it properly. But yeah, it's such a good little tractor for road runs because you can get to where you're going as fast as what you can in a car nearly. You'll happily sit at 45 mile an hour without shaking you about or bouncing you off the seat, and then flat out it'll do, I think, just short of 60 mile an hour. And then when you're on a road run with all the other tractors that only do sort of 20 mile an hour, 15 mile an hour, in top gear, you sort of just a bit more than ticking over. So it's real good on fuel for the actual tractor run, road run. And then again, when you come home, you could get home as fast as you can in a car, or as fast as you could if you were towing it there on a trailer. But yeah, a few little jobs to finish it off, make it a bit more nice, but that's how it is at the moment. I need to get on and get my other one done, my Daihatsu powered one done, and then I'll have nearly a sort of a matching pair. But yeah, it's packed up in the shed with the rest of the tractors now, so it's sort of got fastened in. Got a Fortson Major. This is a 946 International. Austin Gypsy over there. Then there's my Grey Fergie. That was my granddad's Grey Fergie. And then there's a 35, a 65. There's 4 more Grey Fergies down there. There's 2 diesels. That's a diesel one. There's 2 more diesels and 2 petrol paraffins. There's a 4-wheel drive 390, and then there's a International 1455. That's a Massey Fergie 390. And then there's a few other vintage and classic ones scattered about the farm. But yeah, that's my little Grey Fergie. We're on the subject of projects. I've got my BMW engine in bits. I haven't done any work on it for a few weeks now because I've been on with that tractor. But I've just got my turbos back. I've had them reconditioned and made into hybrid turbos. So I've got a billet wheel in them, in both of them. That's got a billet wheel in it as well. Can't get over how small that one is and how big that one is. But yeah, if anyone is doing a project and they need a turbo sorting out or need a bigger turbo or whatever, I got these done at Total Turbos. So James at Total Turbos has done them for me. Very reasonably priced and very good communication. So if you want any turbos doing, you can go to totalturbos.co.uk. I'll put the link in the description. I think he's just recently set up as an independent turbo specialist, so it's yeah, definitely worth considering if you have any turbo needs. So I feel like I've got some enthusiasm back now to get on and get that one finished. Well, I've got my BMW to do as well, but sorry if that felt a bit rushed, and there was a bit more talking than usual. I was rushed to get it put back together. I was still putting it back together on the morning. We were supposed to be going to Welland. We said we'd go to Welland a day earlier this year, which we did, to be more organised, but we were no more organised. We were just at Welland 24 hours earlier than what we were normally. Everything still very much was a rush. The wagon, Ben, my friend, was getting his wagon ready to take to Welland, but he only got it booked in on the Tuesday for an MOT, and we were going on the Wednesday. So yeah, it was rushed for me getting the tractor back together, and it was rushed for Ben getting his wagon ready. So yeah, we got there in the end, so that's all that matters. But yeah, that's all for this week. Hope you enjoyed the video. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.